noche, good evening. I'm Marta Moreno Vega, founder and director of Creative Justice Initiative. So, welcome to What is Ori? And we have a group of panelists, individuals who are expert in their professional fields as well as in the traditional field and understanding the perspectives that we bring in the multi levels of experiences that we have. And this panel comes through various ways. One, it comes through creative space that we were developing in Santurce and is in existence now, gallery. And we thought that in developing a gallery, we should think about different ways and different perspectives and different ways of seeing and different ways of hearing and different ways of understanding that allow us to walk the path that we walk and make the choices that we make and what it looks like and why we understand things in certain ways. Why do we understand how we function in the world, what the world means to us? And we all understood that there's a moment that we're living, right? There's a political moment, there is a cultural moment, there is anxiety, right, that has been brought about by various things and various thoughts. But one of the most offensive, one of the scariest to me, is the notion of erased culture, the increased racism, the increased denial that the nation, the world is made of different people with different values that are valuable, that are precious, that are treasured, and that help people survive in the world, live in the world, grow in the world, and see the world and feel the world. So, as I was asking these questions to myself, and as we were having a discussion in developing Ori Gallery, we thought that we would share the conversation and have a conversation with others. And what brings together this panel is right here. Let me introduce you to the speakers, the experts that will help lead the conversation. And it is a conversation. We hope that you join it, as well as understand what the concept of Ori is in West African thought. So that we know that this thought, this thinking, this reality came in the body of our ancestors. It came as the process of enslavement, dispersal. And here we are from different countries, from different realities, from different understanding, right? Understanding that we're sacred. So I'd like to introduce you to the panel, who will then give you a short synopsis of themselves and how they answer the question, what is Ori? So Alex Lasalle.
Hey, Marta. I got
Hey.
going. I'm Alex Lasalle, from Puerto Rico originally, raised in New York City, Manhattan, particularly El Barrio, Uptown Manhattan. And we have a little feedback here. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was initiated in 1994 into a Congo tradition from Cuba known as Mayombe by my godfather Florencio Miguel Garzón Ayala, also known as Luanganga or Miguelito el Indio, como le decían. And I was with him since about 1990. He didn't decide to initiate me until about 1994. And so this has been what I was raised in. I was raised in a Congo tradition. And apart from that, I was also raised in el espiritismo, en la tradición del espiritismo, because that is something that was just present in my family. In fact, possibly every elder in my family that I can remember, all were espiritistas. It wasn't like something that was just one or two members of the household. So, between misas espirituales almost every Friday in the house, and then just gatherings with my godfather and the Munanso, I was brought up in the Congo tradition of I that's been my go-to for most of my life, as and recently as well, uh, the crowning of Oshun about 9 years ago, um, and being an Omo Awo, right, of Ifa, with my brother here, Jose Rodriguez, and and his Ile as well. So pleasure to meet y'all.
Thank you, Alex. And in that process, you identified four traditions that you are personally involved with, right?
Yes,
Espiritismo, Congo.
Espiritismo, Ocha, Ifa, and Congo.
So we'll come back to that. I just want the audience to understand the layers that you bring,
Yes,
right?
many layers.
And since you mentioned Jose, let's move on to Jose. Sorry, what?
Uh, Hi, can everybody hear me? Yep. So my name is Jose Rodriguez. My Ifa name is Agbola. I am of Puerto Rican and Ecuadorian descent, born and raised in San Diego, California, and now I am residing in Rio Grande, Puerto Rico, with my family. Um, My I don't have the early background. I think as most of you guys have of a connection to some type of African tradition. My family basically was Catholic, and most of them are still Catholic. I'm like the one person that kind of broke off, like the black sheep, right? It just kind of broke off and did something completely different. um, but it's the best choice, the best decision I could have ever made for myself, and I would say for my family, and even for my community, and the community I live in, and wherever I may go. What I practice is Ifa, the Ifa Orisha practice, as practiced in Yoruba land. I was initiated into Ifa in 2005 in Los Angeles, California. My Olu was Fashina Falade. He's the one that initiated me into Ifa. A couple years later, say 2008, is when I would say I started my serious Ifa studies with Chief Shalagba de Popola, and I've been studying with him. Oops, sorry. I've been studying with him ever since, and I'm still studying with him and traveling and doing Ifa work all over the place. I still consider myself an Omoawo, an apprentice, um, and especially every time I go back to Nigeria, I feel like a baby again. Every time I'm there, and it'll probably always be like that. Um, but that's a little bit about myself. A little bit about myself.
Juan Lopez Costa.
Yeah, yeah. Hi. I hope everybody can hear me. I hope so. Is it fine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We hear you
Yeah.
fine.
Excuse my broken English. I don't use English that much. So if I'm a little stuck, bear with
It's
me a little
never
bit.
broken.
Yeah, I'm Juan Lopez Bausa. I'm a writer, novelist here in Puerto Rico. I live in Old San Juan. So if you hear some noise, I'm sorry, but I'm right next to the street. And I was initiated in the Yoruba religion tradition in 1998. I was in Cuba. I had a Eshu, a Legua, coronated on my head, and then I went straight to Ifa. It was well, one of those things from one room to the other. And and since 1998, I've been practicing Ifa in different scales. I'm just like Jose. I come exactly the same with the same background as him. I come from a Catholic family, and I'm the only one that has gone this way. Everybody else doesn't have a clue, and so I'm like just like him. It was for me, it was a strange the way I got into this because since little in Ponce, I'm from Ponce, and my dad used to have his office downtown Ponce, and I used to go there all the time, and I used to walk around, and I used to go to the botanicas because in Ponce there were many botanicas, and all these things attracted me in some mysterious ways. I bought the necklaces, and I bought all these things, and then later in life, when I had become pretty much agnostic because I had left my Catholic belief way back, I encountered this belief system, which like pretty much like was like perfect for what I was like thinking already, and it also got me in contact with my roots in Puerto Rico. That even though I'm not white, I'm not black, everybody in Puerto Rico has it somewhere, and I truly believe that spiritually I was like brought to this and geared towards here. And I've been practicing Ifa at the beginning for many years, for 18 years, somewhere like that. I was practicing it in the criollo style. I was practicing Ifa in the way that I learned it from my Cuban padrinos and my padrinos and all the babalaos in Puerto Rico, which I learned from them here. And then, pretty much like 10 years ago, I started changing. And then, like pretty much 6 years ago, I went completely to the traditional practice of Ifa. And Jose knows it because we know each other here, and we share a lot of things. And he's a super master, and I've been and he was in the he was, Jose was in the already in the African tradition. I was getting into it, and I've been following my Oluo is from Miami, even though he's Cuban and he was initiated Cuban already originally. His name is Ifamurinu, and he's Janos Mandilego, and he lives in Miami, and he got in touch in Africa with a lineage, a very old lineage from Ijebu, from the region of Ijebu, the Oshi family, and the Oshi lineage, and we practice that kind Ifa religion through that way of practicing. It differs a little from Jose's, and there's many ways of practicing in Africa. But we practice that particular one, which is the Oshi tradition. And I've been doing that for like 6 years. So I'm learning. I'm starting. This is so complex that I'm a baby right now in the in the tradition, African tradition. That's
Thank,
pretty much it.
thank you. So we'll circle back because there are issues that you bring up, and Jose brings up, and Alex brings up that we need to ask why, right? Because the why is always the question that is asked when people want to know more about the tradition. We know there are certain things that can't be discussed, but there are certain things that say like why. How is it that we come to stand before, right? Orisha, how is it that we come to stand before belief systems that are foreign to us yet resonate? And in that process, I wanted to make sure that we had other traditions as well, not only the Congo tradition, but I called out to Michael because the Shango tradition, the Trinidadian and Tobago tradition, is very much in line, and it's very much connected, and it's very much a branch, right, of the global African diaspora reality that we've experienced as a people. So, Michael.
Good afternoon. It's just wonderful to be in this room, Marta. Lovely seeing you. Alex, lovely seeing you. I only see you on Facebook with these little still pictures. Wonderful seeing you. My name is Michael Manswell. My Ifa name is varied. Awolola, Oyaniji, Eshutayo, blah, 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 blah. We don't stick on the names. But I was initiated in Trinidad and Tobago in 1987 into the Shango Baptist tradition of that branch of the Yoruba practice in Trinidad and Tobago. And recently, in in 2009, I received the hand of Ifa. And after that, I was initiated. Of course, you know how it goes. You get the hand of Ifa, and they say, next thing. And so I put it off, put it off, put it off until very recently, a few years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And I went to Nigeria and was initiated fully to Ifa in Abeokuta. My Oluwo is, uh, oh Lord, what is his name? Alaelu Ogunwale. And I was initiated into Ifa in the compound of Baba Ifa Tope in Abeokuta. And after that, I was initiated to Eshu. And it's very interesting, this journey. And I, in a way, I do thank the Caribbean Cultural Center for kind of opening the way, for getting me in touch with all these people that know the way. And I think because of that um, direction, I was able to, find good people, strong people, um, people with integrity that I could lean on, so that this journey is one of constant wonder. Like everyone else, it's constantly wow. It's a constant aha experience. Wow, I didn't know. And of course, during the process of initiation, things come up that certain people aren't supposed to know because they're only in your thoughts. And that to me was just an amazing journey. And every time I think about it, I always come up with this thing: Ifa does not lie. It's really simple. Ifa does not lie. And so I truly trust the process. And I think that it is a process that spans um, ethnicities, belief systems, whatever you may want to call it. It is one of the things that finds resonance in every single spot on the planet so far, for me.
Thank you, Michael. You see me fidgeting because who's also supposed to be on is Baba Neil Clark, and he's trying to get on and he can't get on, and we're trying to get him on. So while we're trying to get him on, forgive my fidgeting with my phone. It's not being rude in any way or disattentive, but it's trying to get Baba Clark on as well. And one of the things that I would like us to just ask the question that brings together the panel: what is Ori? So, should we go around the same way we started, Alex? In the traditions that you are involved in, what is Ori?
I'll pass this first to Baba Jose Rodriguez, if that's okay with you, only because I'm going to be bringing it from a whole nother aspect, which is the Congo Bantu concept of Intu, which is very similar, um, almost identical to the Yoruba concept of Ori.
Okay, we're good with that.
Okay. All right. So there is so much to share about Ori. Um, one of the first things that was taught to me by my elder is that he told me that Ori is literally the extension of Olodumare in every single living thing that exists, not just people, animals, plants, insects, fish, everything that exists here with us has basically a destiny. And so when he first shared that with me, he also added that when you think if you are the extension of Olodumare, which is the creator, God, however you want to say it, that means that if we're all connected to that same source, we're all these tiny pieces with specific jobs, assignments, and tasks that we all have to complete to keep this whole thing functioning and in equilibrium. Um, and so it leads to Ori being that Ori is, you can say Ori, it depends on the context that you use the word, but Ori could mean your physical head. Ori could refer to destiny, your purpose. Ori could also refer to your character, your attitude, your tendencies that you have, your behavior also. Um, and so Ori is usually divided into two sections also. So there's Ori Ode, which refers to specifically to destiny, your purpose. And within Ori Ode is basically there's three other kind of layers involved in there. Um, the things that you picked that you wanted to accomplish here in the world, things that were given to you by the Irumo Leorisha to support the things that you chose. That is called Akunleya, Akunlegba. Then there's a third component in the destiny section called Ayamo, Ayamo, which are basically things that the Irumo and Orisha have given to you for whatever purpose. It could be to learn lessons, it could be as an added support. Sometimes it's karma things that are added in there. But there are things that you cannot change once you're physically born here in the world. You can't change the Ayamo aspects. Akunleyan and Akunlegba can be shifted while you're here. Things can be added, things can be taken away. But those three sections, Akunleyan, Akunlegba, Ayamo, are what form our destinies in the Yoruba cosmology. Which form your likes, your dislikes, your taboos come out of those same things that you picked or that were given to you. Whether you're a man or a woman, uh, you're born to be black, you're yellow, you're white, you were born in China, you were born in Africa. All of those things are in your destiny. Um, who your parents are going to be, um, strengths, weaknesses, all of those things are within destiny. And then, most importantly, the purpose. What is your small little piece of the puzzle of why you're here? What is it that you're supposed to be doing when you're here? What are you not supposed to be doing? So you're not wasting any time while you're here. All of those things are within what the Yoruba call Oriode. Oriode. Then there's the other aspect, which is Orinu. And Orinu is actually represented by our belly button, this area right here in the center. That refers to your character, your feelings, your emotions, your tendencies, your behavior in general, how you react to everything that's here. Are you calm? Are you quick to anger? Do you think about things a lot? Do you not think about things and kind of impulsive? All of those things are here. And so what comes into play when we talk about Ori is a lot of times even when we do readings, Ifa readings, and it even includes Orisha readings with cowrie shells, the person who is consulting for you is actually connecting to your Ori, and it's actually your Ori that's telling the Awo what to tell you. It's like a reminder. Please tell Alex this. Please tell Juan this. Please, Jose, remind Jose about this. They're supposed to be doing this. They're not supposed to be doing that. So it's like in the reading, we're just reminding the person of what they're supposed to and not supposed to be doing, and how to best handle whatever situation may be happening at the moment. Um, and so, yes, Oromila is involved in there. Oromila is the interpreter of the messages. We, as Awos specifically, are interpreting the messages that come out in the Odus when we cast. But those messages are all geared to supporting Ori, the Ori of the person in one way, shape, form, or another. Um, the most challenging piece of Ori is when there's a contradiction between Ori Ode and Ori Inu. When there's that contradiction between what you're destined and what you're supposed to be doing and what you feel. And they're not always in alignment with each other. I feel that I should be eating, I don't know, pepperoni pizza every day. My destiny says, no, Agbola, if you do that, you're going to get a heart attack. Your cholesterol is going to go up. You're this, this, this. Just to give like an example. But sometimes our feelings, what we feel, does not match up with our purpose. And that's when we go through pitfalls and challenges. And so when we go to readings, we're going to realign to get that Ori nu back in alignment with that Orio de. Of course, when they're lined up, that's when things should be going smooth, 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 smooth. When they're not, we gotta check this part, Orinu, the majority of the time. The issue is usually here with those feelings, that character. So every time that I speak about Ori, I'm always talking about Orio de, Orinu, and how that you can balance them and work through them to make sure they're not in contradiction with one another. Um, Sometimes people get the messages right away and they make the shift. Sometimes people see the logic right away. Sometimes it takes a while for folks to understand that message that's given to them during the Fa reading. And then they come into alignment eventually. And unfortunately, sometimes it never happens during this lifetime. Maybe it'll happen on the next one or the next one or the next one. Um, and we keep at it until we've achieved that destiny, that purpose of why we're here. So those are some of the main points that we usually share when talking about Ori and how we kind of divide all those little sections. And there's so much that can be talked about each little section, but I at least wanted to just give like a broad view of the Yoruba thought around Ori and what it is and how to work with it.
What, what is Ori? How do you interpret it?
Okay. Okay. Well, Ori, besides what Jose just said, which is just exactly the same way I see it. Ori is also it's what's called Orisha Enijan, which is the Orisha of the human beings. It is specifically the Orisha made for human beings, and obviously everything has Ori too, and everything has the. But in our body and in our situation, Ori is the most important Orisha, and it's the one that that allows the blessings from other Orishas to come through or not to come through. It's like a middle intermediary, and it's also the Orisha that is with you all the way from birth, all your life, and death, and beyond death. Uh, for me, I'm gonna say a little anecdote because I came to the knowledge of Ori slowly, not at the beginning. When I was in Cuba in 1998, I was receiving the Orisha and getting initiated in Ifa. I was with like very knowledgeable Babalaos from La Habana, very top people there, and I never ever heard the word Ori. In Cuba, the Ori tradition came late. I was there 25 years ago, and Ori wasn't there. The word wasn't used. They used the word eleda, which means head, physical head, to talk about Ori because they knew what Ori was, but they didn't really understood it just like Jose explained right now. But they had some knowledge because I remember I'm a Eshu. I have Eshu on my head, and you know that in Cuba the doves are taboo for Eshu. And I remember I had I did the coronation and everything. And when I went to Ifa, they went to do the feeding of the head with two doves. That's when I saw the first controversy because there were santeros there that were opposed because I was a son of Belagua, and that was supposed to be a taboo right there. And the Babalaos said no, they insisted that it doesn't matter because those doves had to go because they were given to another deity that was an Elegua, but they called it Eleda, the head. And I knew right there that was something that wasn't really understood completely, and precisely that's Ori. And eventually, well, I came to the words started coming up here in Puerto Rico among the Babalaos, and you start hearing all of a sudden about Ori and what is this, blah, blah, blah. And just all the Babalaos come from Miami. Miami started already earlier than here, and they started to talk about it. And then my godfather, my padrino from Miami, he started like teaching me about Ori. He told me how to change the rogación ceremony, how to do it correctly according to the tradition, the African tradition about Ori. And that's when I started l- understanding the whole concept. I'm not going to go over what Jose went through because it's super well explained, but I want to talk a little bit about another aspect of Ori, which is that other aspect, which is the part that makes things possible for our destiny. You know that for the Yoruba conception of everything, it's divided in Orun and Aye, in the spiritual world that we don't see and the physical world Aye. And there's a relationship between those two things. Everything that is in Aye, it's previously in Orun, has it's been there already. And in the whole process of Ori, there's the Ori, in the creation of Ori, Ori divides into Ori, the one that comes down to earth, and Impori, with the one that stays up. And it's this communication between these two what makes possible the accomplishment of your destiny. That is that through the ceremonies that we make here, we give Impori the message to create the things that we need in heaven in order to be created down in earth. So everything that we have and all our destinies and everything in our lives are guided by Ori. And here comes Ifa. Ifa is, remember that when the Oris were created, when we were in Akuleba, in Akuleba, José, ¿cómo es? Akuleba, Ayambo y Akunlegba y Ayambo. When we were in Akunleyan, where we're deciding the things that we want for our destiny, there's two spirits that are really, really involved in there. One is your mother, even though she's alive. Her spirit is really involved in there. And the other part is Ifa, or Rumila, who's watching what's going into that Ori. And he's the witness of our destinies, of what we chose. And it's hot that is inside Ori. And that's why Orumila is the guide for our Ori, which is actually our life plan, our destiny, nuestro Ori is our life plan, what we choose for ourselves, and we forget it when we hug that tree, Iggy Bagbe, and the purpose of forgetting is actually to have free will and be able to choose. And or Ifa is the one that guides us through these choosings. And that's why, for example, for a Babalao, once a Babalao gets initiated, his Ori and his Ifa are completely uh, engaged one another. What you do to your Ifa, you're doing it to your Ori too. And so, in that sense, for example, uh, there's the whole Orisha that you receive Ori on, which is like the representation of Ori. And I'm like, we talk about with Jose. I've talked about this before, and and I'm kind of like, I understand, and I believe, and I estoy de acuerdo with Jose in the sense that our Ori is already with us. We don't really need that thing
Well,
to
we come with Ori.
to
It's,
yeah,
that's
we
the
come
question.
with Ori. We come with Ori, and what I come to understand actually is that the only reason we have that that representation, it should be only for babalaos. I don't understand why they give it to other people, because the rest of the people, they have it. They have Ori already. And I understand that the whole thing is in order for you yourself to be able to work with your head in that thing. Because, for example, there's things that you can only do in your head, that you can only do it by blowing. You can't put it, and you blow it to the icon when you're doing it to yourself only. The icon is for yourself only, and I understand that's only for babalaos to use, because of that connection between their ifa and their ori, which is like completely unified. But basically, ori in terms of like hierarchy. Ori is on top of all the orishas. I mean, Ifa is on top of it, because Ifa is like the prime minister of God. He has all the permissions to do everything, to sign the checks, do everything. But Ori, in terms of our lives, comes before the other orishas. It's way more important, and that's basically.
What I understood from my godfather, Elpidio Caldena, was that we're born with Ori.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
We're
yeah,
born
yeah.
with Ori. We come to the
No,
world with Ori,
yeah, it's the
right?
original orisha inside of us, and like Jose
So I
said,
think that
it's a
in
part
the
of God inside.
conceptualization of Ori, and I hope I'm adding to what has been said, is that in fact we come sacred into the world. This notion that you become sacred afterwards,
No,
right?
no,
I
no,
don't
no,
believe to be so. You
no,
come
no,
with,
because
therefore
like
you
Jose
come with
said,
Orisha.
Ori is the part of Olodumare inside of us.
Exactly. So we
Mhm.
come sacred into the world, right? We know
Yeah,
we
yeah.
come, and then which is, I guess, what drew me. No, it did draw me into the tradition. We're born sacred. We're not
Ashe,
born with the concept of original sin.
No,
Ashe.
no, 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 no. Actually, that was one of the things
It's a
that.
clave. It's a
Oh
clave.
no, that's super clave. That was one of the things that took me out of Catholicism.
Me
And
too.
me as well.
The
And me as
guilt,
well. And
yeah,
me as
the
well. When I
original
had my
sin,
baby, I said, there is no way this child comes with original sin.
yeah. Oh, and the
There's no
idea
way.
of the world as a valley of tears. For
Exactly.
the Yoruba, it's not like that at all. For
No.
the Yoruba, this world is just as spiritual as the other world.
Great. Thank
So
you.
that's
So
pretty
we'll
much
come
it.
back to you, Michael.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, Michael.
Oh,
From
that
Trinidad, Tobago.
all of that is just so wonderfully heartwarming. And
Hey,
hi, Baba Neil.
um,
And so wonderful to hear being spoken. In Trinidad and Tobago, the concept of Ori, when I was being initiated back in 1987, was not something, much like Baba Juan was saying, not spoken at all. Not spoken at all. Your actual head was treated in a certain way, and it was treated as if it were a sacred container. Certainly, they talked about it. They were careful with it. They dressed it in a certain way. They addressed it in a certain way, and so on and so on. The idea of Ori came from my own reading, but also exposure to Babalaos and Lukumi community, but also the tradition, the priests from Nigeria, etc. Uh, in Trinidad and Tobago now, in fact, in my family's yard, I have to go back and check this. One of the branches of my family, I understand that they are initiating priests to Ifa fully in Trinidad and Tobago, etc., 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 which is wonderful. And because the world has become so much smaller, because Babalaos like uh, Abimbola, Popola, Somorin, all these major movers and shakers have gone to Trinidad. In fact, I want to say Baba Somorin may maybe married to a Trinidadian right now, and lived some of his time in Trinidad and Tobago. And so this concept of Ori has become widespread. Uh, the, the idea of Ori was really about the physical head. No one spoke about that which was inside. Now, there are old sayings for women. If something goes wrong, you will hold your head and bawl. But when it is being demonstrated, they don't say this. They say hold your head in your belly.
Mm.
Women hold your head and bawl, but they would never say hold your head and bawl. It's not that. It's here. And I always found that to be so odd. Like, why would you say that? And hold your belly button area. Like, that doesn't make sense. You know, physically, it doesn't make sense. But as I grew into the tradition, I realized, wait a minute, oh, that's where it comes from. That's where there is no, what I call, no forgetting. It might be absent in this way that you're not conscious, but it's all there. It's all present. And I what drew me to the whole idea of Ori consciousness is the fact that Ori provides an atmosphere, it provides oxygen for us to really realize our full selves, our full capacity, understand our past, and navigate the present so that we have a better future. And actually, the first time I saw an Ori ceremony was at the home of Paulo Bispo. I think Baba Neil Clark and I were there, and Paulo was doing ceremony with Ori, and it was so interesting to me because I had never seen anything like that. It was not a rogation per se; it was this Ori ceremony. It's like, and it caused me then to push into that. And I think Ifa is making up for lost time with me. Every time I get a reading, you need to fix your Ori. You need to do this every single time. Every single time, it's like, okay, we're making up for them lost years now. You got to do this. Ori, 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 Ori. You got to be, you know. And so it's a wonderful navigation tool. You could see it as a sextant where you look into the stars and navigate through the rest of your life. And it is very, 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 very important.
Thank you, Michael. Baba Neil. Thank you. You have me having a mini heart attack.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, I was having a medium-sized heart attack. So,
well, I'm glad you're on. Glad you're on.
Everyone, good evening.
Abato.
Where is the conversation going? I'm at a disadvantage.
I'm asking everyone to give their definition, their perception, perspective of what is Ori. What is
Ori? What is Ori? Okay.
We're doing it, and since everyone, and I worked hard at making sure that you all came from different perspectives and different experiences, so that it would be different perspectives to the same thing.
So, from my perspective, Ori essentially is the indwelling divinity in us all. Olodumare is all. Everything is in Olodumare, comes from Olodumare, and Olodumare is in everything. So for me, Ori represents that spark, that sliver, that element of Olodumare that exists in all of us. It exists in everything. when we talk about Oriki, and there is Oriki for everything, for people, for towns, for animals, for plants. When we talk about Oriki, Oriki literally means the saluting of the Ori. That's literally what it means. We are saluting the Ori of the person. We are saluting the Ori of the town. We are saluting the Ori of the animal. We are saluting the Ori of the plant. And it is in that invocation that we activate that divine dimension of whatever it is that we're referring to.
So that
Ori
is for people who don't understand the term or the concept.
Well, literally, Oriki, to ki mean good morning, good evening, how are you? I'm saluting you. Ki in Yoruba, to salute it in Yoruba is ki. So ki, to salute means to salute, to address. So when we say Oriki, it is the saluting of the Ori. So Oriki manifests in, for those who are not familiar with Yoruba culture, Oriki manifests in the oral literature, in the praise poetry. They call it praise poetry of a person, the praise poetry of a town, the praise poetry of an animal, etc., etc., etc. So what Ori is the highest estimation. It's the highest estimation of anything. It's the highest estimation of any person. There used to be a well, I probably still is, for the army, be all that you can be. There used to be the ad in the army, be all that you can be. Well, the be that all that we can be is what our Oriki has. That is our potential. That is the optimal potential for any individual. Now, whether we arrive at that, whether we attain at that, there's a lot of steps to that. But we are in the world because we have selected an Ori. We could not, a person could not be in the world unless before we came from Orun to Ile, we had to select an Ori. And that is our optimal realization, our optimal potential, our optimal definition. And then we navigate life's journey trying to stay tuned to that. Michael used an analogy. I like to think of Ori as the divine GPS. Okay, we're going to the end of our journey. We have a destination that we have selected, but how do we get there? We depend on divination in order to consult our Ori to make sure that we are on the right track in terms of getting to where we're supposed to get. I could go on and on and on, but I think that kind of answers the question.
So as we go again round robin, Alex, you said that your tradition and one of the traditions that you're involved in is the Congo tradition.
Yeah, that's probably the major.
There's similarity and there's differences in terms of what we understand as Ori, right? With all of the definitions that have been given that lead to the same place, that lead to the same definition, which is beautiful, right? Because I think the first thing that we have to give praise to is the fact that after more than 500 years, right, our people have been able to sustain these traditions, right, under the worst conditions known to mankind and humankind. So that we're talking and having this conversation and people are initiating every day is a power that we bring to the world. So acknowledging that as we talk and acknowledging you for maintaining these traditions.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to talk a little bit about a concept known as Ntu, spelled N as in Nancy, T-U. And two, within the Bakongo cosmological, right, concept, it literally means consciousness, right? But it can also refer to your forehead or to the front part of your face, right? So your face itself. But in two, the way it's really understood is as consciousness. And it is considered to be the true you, the way Dr. Foucault taught it, right? And two is the true you. It is who you really are. It is the you that is not represented by the physical you, right? Because the physical you is only one face of many incarnations of that original you, which is N2, consciousness. It's interesting to note that the word Bantu, the root word is N2, and it means many consciousness. Right? Muntu, one consciousness. You know, Bantu, the many consciousness. All right. So when we talk about Bantu culture, you're talking about the many consciousness. It's said that Ntu is born out of an essence, right? The essence of Nsam Yampungu, of great God Almighty, which in amongst the Congo, it's neither male nor female. It's just pure energy. And that Ntu is known as Ntu Nene, or Nene means grand or big. And so Ntu Nene is the divine consciousness, which is literally just meaning the bigger consciousness, the greater consciousness. We are all born with Ntu because that is our true self. It's not something that we consider to be separate from who we are. It is the true nature of ourselves. It is what we use in order to guide ourselves in our everyday lives, in our everyday ways of being. And that Ntu, that consciousness goes through many incarnations in the physical body, which is really just a vessel for existing within this plane as we evolve into other dimensional planes, or however you want to see it. But Ntu, at the end of the day, is exactly what all of the other colleagues previously stated. It is this divine consciousness, this divine mind, right? That is found within all things, human, animal, plant, mineral. All these things have this divine consciousness, which is why in a lot of the Bakongo traditions, as well as the Yoruba traditions, you're going to work with an element of nature. You speak to that element because you are speaking to the Ntu of that element. You are building with that element, whether it's a rock, whether it's the flame of a candle, whether it's the plants that you use for medicine, for bilongo. These are they all have their Ntu. And the interesting thing is that was one of the first prayers that I was taught by my godfather, Florencio Miguel Garzón Ayala, and it is possibly one of the most important prayers found within our lineage. Palo. We come from the Mayombe branch of Palo. There are about 5 different branches of Palo. Mine is Mayombe, and my house of Batalla Sacampeño, has a prayer just for that. It's entonene fuka emu baku lukwendan so baku lukwendan ganga moto lukisa buswame. So it's actually a very long prayer, but it opens asking for the blessings of the divine consciousness and the divine Ntu, the great Ntu.
So then how do we, right, now that we've all sort of are given the perspective and an understanding of what we're talking about when we talk about Ori, how do we bring that consciousness at this moment, this historical moment that we're living in, where people are talking about eradicate culture, eradicate history, right? Eradicate who we are, what we've been, what we are to become, right? Which we haven't done. Our people have fought, have been warriors in maintaining these traditions. But here you have people talking about eradicate culture, eradicate a curriculum of history. What then does our intelligence, our consciousness communicate to our people in terms of what the future looks like, in terms of using your consciousness, using your head, using critical thought, which is what the understanding of Ori is. How do you think for your well-being? How do you think for your wellness, the wellness of your people, the wellness of your family? Because if we brought it this far, right, in a moment of attempted erasure again, annihilation again, right? How then do we use Ori? How then do we use Entu, right? In ways of thinking of the moment of now and the moment of wellness going forward. So I put it to you.
Bravo. One of the things that, and I don't know if this would answer the question specifically, but your question reminded me of the Yoruba creation story, at least one section of it, which right now we are living in the transition period of destroying ourselves, forgetting who we are, and I'm talking about humanity in general.
Exactly.
All races, all groups.
Absolutely.
Basically transitioning from this, or sorry, in the destructive period, slowly transitioning into the traditional, the fifth stage, from fourth to fifth stage, to living in a traditional fashion once again. And when I mean traditional, I'm not specifically saying Ifa, I'm not saying Palo, I'm really saying going back to the earth-based traditions, the original ones that existed here, the original teachings that we were given to all different peoples, which to me there was one source and then they just kind of branched out and spread. But going back to that, and the one thing that I've been noticing in the past 20 years is that little by little, and I would even say even more little by little, more and more people are going back to traditional practices than I have ever noticed before. With all the push that these modern traditions have on trying to convert people, and you got to do this and that and the other, all the earth-based traditions that don't proselytize, that don't go out and try to force people and, I'm going to save you, you got to do it, that they don't do that, people are naturally gravitating back to those traditions because I feel that their Ori is telling them something's off, and I need to go back. Whether it be a native practice from the Americas, a native practice from the continent of Africa, or native practice from Asia, or wherever it may be, I feel a lot of people, their Ori is telling them we need to go back to these traditions because whatever they're teaching us now doesn't make sense, and it's taking us down this path where if we keep going, the human race may not be here again. Everything else will keep moving, but not us. And so it reminds me of that transition period in the Ifa creation story in Osa Ogunda. We are now in the fourth stage of this creation going into the fifth, and there is going to be a lot of destruction, a lot of challenges, but people are slowly shifting into more traditional practice. And I feel that the Ori is an individual, but there's also this like global Ori that we're all a part of, because there's a individual destiny, but we're all part of this greater destiny. And I feel that greater destiny is starting to hit some people, and we're starting to notice, hey, let's start reorienting and start switching some things. And I feel a lot of you guys have also seen people going back into traditional practices too. It's happening everywhere. It's really happening everywhere. So
if I may, I think one of the key, or some of the key ideas hinge around respect, hinge around ethics, hinge around accountability. One cannot give respect if one does not know respect. If one does not respect oneself, then one cannot respect anyone else. And one of the things with Ori, that being the highest estimation of self, people of African descent, traditional peoples, have been traumatized, have been oppressed, have been subjected to atrocities that direct them and the awareness of themselves away from recognizing and appreciating who they are. So if we don't respect ourselves, if we don't respect nature, if we don't respect other people, then there's not going to be a resolution to the issues that we have. One of the prime directives in the realization of the destiny that our Ori holds is that as we travel through our life's journey, we should not collide. We should not collide with spiritual entities. We should not collide with the environment. We should not collide with social structures. We should not collide with other people. That it's about navigating one's journey without friction. Okay. Now, we all know that we're living in a world where we have to be cognizant of that. We have to be aware of that in order to collide. It's like driving, if you're driving on the highway and you're not paying attention to the other cars on the road, you're going to crash into something. You got to pay attention. You got to respect the other people on the road. Well, Ori is our best estimation. It is our best potential. And if we conduct ourselves in a way that respects and appreciates that, now we're in a position to start recognizing and appreciating and respecting other things and other people around us. So I believe that in respecting, in recognizing and respecting the indwelling divinity in ourselves, then we are taking the first step to respecting and conducting ourselves ethically and with accountability in relation to our environment, in relation to other people. And so I think that Ori holds the possibility, because Ori in the Yoruba tradition is the first Orisha. Okay, it is the first Orisha. When different versions of the story, Olodumare or Orunmila said, you know, who can go with their devotee to the end of the road? And they went down the line. Shango said, I could go, but when I get to Koso, I have to stop. And each one of the Orisha went down, because each one of the Orisha, we share. Each one of the Orisha, everyone who is an Orisha devotee, we share that Orisha. Ori is the only Orisha that is for us. My Ori is for me. Marta's Ori is for her. Alex's Ori is for him. Jose's Ori is for him. Michael's Ori is for him. Juan's Ori is for him. And that is our direct connection to Olodumare. Connect direction to the divine, within which, if we believe that everything is in Olodumare and Olodumare is in everything, then that is our direct connection. For us, Shango is external to us. Egungun even is external to us. Eshu is external to Oshun is external to us. Owatala is external to us. These are entities that are external to us that we share with everyone else who is reaching out to that entity in order to access the Ire or to overcome the Osobo. Ori is the only one. And there's a Yoruba proverb. No person, no Orisha can bless a person without the permission of their Ori. Regardless of what you want, regardless of what we want, regardless of what we desire, well, regardless of what we think is nice, if it is not in one's destiny, I don't care who you could, all of the Orisha could line up on your side. If Ori says no, it's not going to happen. And if Ori says yes, regardless of the obstacles that one is facing, it's going to happen. You may have to get a reading. You may have to do ebo. You may have to do appeasement. You may have to do some heavy lifting. But if Ori says it's for you, it will happen in its time.
That's it.
So honoring that indwelling divinity that's mine and that's yours and that belongs to, that is not belongs, it is an essential component of who we are. We could not be here. We could not be alive in the world without Ori. So by respecting Ori and conducting ourselves ethically with accountability so that we can realize fully the Ire that is in Ori, we also learn how to conduct ourselves ethically and accountably with other people, with our environment, with the water, with the air, with the fire, with the earth. This is the reason that we were diverted from this consciousness, because this is where the power is.
So how does that conscious get broader in its understanding? And
If I may, wonderful question. And we can sit here, the six of us on this panel, and philosophize till thy kingdom come, because we love and respect each other and we understand the language that we're speaking. However, I think Marta's question begs for another question from us. How do we practically go about utilizing, manipulating, empowering self, family, community, world using the lessons that we've just spoken about? Now, think that the majority of the world is not on this panel. They're not hearing us. They're not hearing us. So we inhabit a very narrow world with not a narrow focus, but the amount of hands we have to extend into the tributaries of the world, not many. I think that as all of us, as educators, it must start with our families. It must start with our little ones. It must start in the residencies that we do in the schools. It must start with that level of empowering. I had to tell a young woman today, so interesting that this came up. I gave a quiz. I gave a chapter and I said, okay, I'll give a quiz. And I gave them a study sheet. They had the textbook. First question, it's not open book? No. If it's open book, it's not a test. Okay, so we got over that. She said to me, Professor, just give me a 0, because I just didn't. I said, take this back, sit down, and remember, something's going to come. She came up with 2 answers out of 10, and those 2 answers were absolutely 100% correct. I said, okay, go back and sit again, something else will come. At that point, she refused. She just sat there wanting to cry, being upset, being depressed. At the end, when I started to go through after I collected the papers and I started to go through, she says, I had two more and they would have been correct. I said, trust your head. Your head knows. Your head remembers. We must first empower our young ones to trust that which we call Ori, whether we want to call it Ori, whatever we want to call it. But that serves as a springboard for us to then launch into something else in order to enliven the consciousness so that they have a tool in any situation. It could be a test. It could be it could be their driving test. It could be a test. It could be an interview. It could be whatever. But that moment of that stillness and of that quietness for everything to flow back, like we've been talking about the promises we made in heaven, all the things we needed to do, all the things that we set out to do, all the things that Ori knew, da 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 da, can flow back into that moment and then empower. Because I realize that if we don't do it right now, they're not allowing, and I say allowing in inverted commas, for our children to read. They're not allowing for children to read. Not, I went to a school and there were books on the shelf, and I said to the English teacher, you're sending me kids that that don't know how to write. He says, Michael, the books have been there. I have introduced them. Not a single one of these young people have said to me, can I borrow? Can I look? Let me read. And that's partly because we're not allowed as teachers inside of the system to teach reading or to teach grammar or to teach spelling or to teach this or to teach that, because it's being outlawed. So what has to happen inside our communities, wherever we find whatever we call our community, we have to set these young minds down and say, think. Let it come back. Let it come back. And by creating a practice, we then flower the practice. It's the only way, because we, like I said, we could philosophize, because it is a way in which we have set about. We've set about gaining this knowledge. We've set about consciously learning, and or along the way picked up stuff that we have then said, we have a cathartic experience. This is what this is. This is what that is. And we start putting things into place. But our young people are not being allowed. Their quiet time is invaded by anime, which is nothing's wrong with that. Anime and everything else and all these other distractions that cause them to then not focus, and therefore they've become dissipated. It's no longer this hot band of thirst. There is no thirst. And so unfortunately, if we have abdicated our function in educating our young people, then the schools that don't care will take up the cause.
Well, I think one of the things that we need to think about, right, is how is it that one intertwines, networks, creates, right, that environment, that interest, that energy. Because everybody on this panel is a creator, is an artist. You have writers, vocalists, dancers, Michael, Baba Clark, master drummer, Alex igual, Jose, a sociologist, yeah, educator, right? So how then do we bring together a kind of creative thinking community right? How do we bridge it? Because I think that this is my opinion. I may be totally wrong, right? But I think that we have all learned to be professional here and keep our intelligence somewhere else, right? Keep a division between work and what one perceives, one believes the world to be, your sacredness to be, if you will. How then, and I know that, I mean, I know Alex, I know, Michael, I know Baba, Jose, I'm in meeting, and Juan, I'm meeting. But how then does that, what is called professional, right? And people see as other than what you are or outside of you and divides that, because in our tradition, we don't divide that, right? It should be one and the same. And if not, in the places we are, then we create it, right? We create it in writing. We create it so that that comes not in a sort of Eurocentric, divided way, in department ways, but it comes together in ways that are formidable in terms of energizing thought, energizing ideas, energize, right? Because it comes from somewhere. Yori activates. And how do we activate it, right? And going to your point, Michael, you don't have to say I'm activating it, right? But you do it. Uh-huh. Why? You were
Yeah, I think one aspect of this religion, especially of Ori, that I think it's very important for myself, and I found to be very important in general, is that learning about Ori and learning and our religion, it's a way and it's a mechanism to learn about yourself, but it's also a
That's it.
mechanism to learn about the others. Remember that the Yorubas are very communal people. The, their communities are essential to their lifestyles. And for example, one of the things that really amazed me was when I learned about the ceremony that they do to the babies, to the just born, the Sentaya ceremony.
That's dying, yeah.
The Sentaya ceremony is a public ceremony in which the whole community is there watching over to see what the Ori of that little kid wants. And it becomes a responsibility of the whole community once they learn to sponsor that Ori according to what Ifa had said in that original ceremony of divination, no? And when you see that, you understand that the first Ori is a mechanism to know yourself, but to learn the the skills that you need to be able to be a social person, to be able to have patience with the other people, to be able to understand the difficulties that the other people might face, to be empathic. All these things are part of the way that Ori works in yourself and in the community. For example, when I was the concept, for example, the concept of the guardian angel, which in Cuba has been allocated to the Orishas. It was something that really, for many years, it bothered me in the sense that I couldn't I couldn't understand how it was possible that the whole humanity can be the way of the humanity of behaving, the hundreds and thousands of millions of different behaviors can be allocated in only like a few orishas. And then you say, so the whole humanity and the behavior of the whole humanity can be explained by what, 12, 15 orishas? That's impossible. And then when I went and I went into the ori and I learned about these things, you learn that in Africa, Ori is the guardian angel, because the Ori is like the fingerprints. There's no Ori like the other. Every Ori is different. There might be two babalaos with the same sign, with el mismo signo, but their Oris are different completely, and their interpretation of that sign is completely different because they're in different situations. And when you put that on the world situation that we're facing right now, like Jose said, we're in a moment of real danger for humanity. And we're in a very, very, very dangerous moment right now. And probably the majority of the people don't even know this or don't even care. But the idea that there has to be a world culture, the globalist idea, it's something that goes against the idea of Ori, because the nations, the world is composed of a whole bunch of different Oris that are the different nations. And when you try to put a Western civilization type of ideology, of type of mentality, and you try to impose it on the whole world, you're going against Ori. For example, when you come up, when we look at the Western today's Western ideologies, and when we look at the Yoruba religion, about the Yoruba culture and religion, we see that those are completely different worlds. The Western ideology world that we're here, that is trying to become the world ideology, and the Yoruba people think differently. And I think the idea that everybody has to think the same is completely against the idea of Ori. So I'm talking about, like, the local and the world. It's kind of like the same, in the same way that the little kid, everybody's is like around him to make sure that his individuality it's saved. The world should work the same way. But right now we're in a moment where we have like one hegemonic power that wants everybody to behave the same way. And that's why we're having the problem with the situation that we're in. So I think Ori can give us like very good lessons on how to behave in the world stage. But of course, the people that are behaving and that have the command of this have no idea what about the Ori or anything like this. So it's kind of like difficult to try to make a change in the world from our knowledge of Ori and how this thing works, when out there it's just like complete ignorance.
But don't we
We
have a
must do it, though.
responsibility?
We must do
We
it.
have a responsibility to
No,
our
no, we
children.
must do it. We must keep doing it. I do it
Yeah.
all the time. I do it every
Ah,
day with
okay.
consultations every day.
Mm, mm.
But when I see the world, what's going on and where we're going, I sometimes I look at that document by Bimbora that said, "If I will save the world, if I salvará el mundo," and I have that hope in me that we don't end up fried in a few months.
Yeah, there's a concept. There's a concept in Yoruba culture, Omoluabi, Omoluabi, and it's a person of good character.
Hmm.
It's a person of good character, and we throw around those of us that are in the tradition throw around the term, character or good character. How many people really unpack that term?
Hmm.
What are the components of good character? Because if you take 10 people, 25 people, 50 people, 100 people, and say, what is good character? You're going to get 10, 20, 25, 50, 100 different definitions of what good character is. But, as we were saying, one of the powerful things about the Yoruba culture is that it evolved in a way that demonstrated how people could exist collectively in an urban environment. And my observations of being from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and studying the Yoruba tradition, Yoruba philosophy, is that the qualities that comprise good character are diametrically opposed to the qualities that are advocated for success in a capitalist society. They're diametrically opposed. You got to promote yourself. You got to big yourself up. You got to do this. You got to do that. Me, me, me. I got to have. I got to do. The relationship is about me, 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 me. I want. I need. But those are not the qualities that comprise good character. Shuru ni baba iwa. Patience is the father of character. You know, patience, respect, you know, cooperation, etc., 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 etc. We could go on and on and on. So the thing is, you know, I'm an Oloshun. I'm initiated in Oshun. And one of the most powerful tools that I have, that we have from Oshun, is the mirror. Not to see how one looks, but to see how one is doing. How am I doing? How am I behaving? How am I conducting myself? How am I thinking? What are my priorities? How am I interacting with people? And I have to say, my Fedifun to my godparents, my Fedifun to Oshun, because that is one of the most powerful tools that I have to check myself and to see how I'm doing. Because if I see how I'm doing, then I can be in a position to be a positive presence in the community, a positive presence in the society, a positive sense, you know, presence in the country and in the world. And so I think that that self-reflection, is essential. So when we talk about how do we, like you said, Baba Wande, Ifa can fix a broken world. But why is he saying that? Because by consulting Ifa, when we do divination, whether it's through Ifa, whether it's through Dilogun, whether it's OB, ultimately the question is going to our Ori. It may be through Ifa, it may be through the Orisha, it may be through Egun, but the point of the matter is that they all have to go back to one's Ori to see if it's okay. Because if Ori says no, it's not going to happen. So that ultimate answer of yes or no ultimately is coming from Ori through whatever that external entity that we're dealing with, whether it's Egun, it's Eshu, whether it's Orisha, whatever it is. And, you know, unfortunately, we don't have enough conversation about cosmology. So we have people that are coming from various traditions. They're coming from Roman Catholicism. They're coming from Protestantism. They come from Islam. They're coming from atheism. They're coming and they're getting involved in Orisha tradition, but we don't really have an understanding of what this is. And then we want to try to make things work the way we think they should work. You know, I love working with my hands. I love working with cars. I used to work on my own car. You cannot take a starter from a Volkswagen and put it in a Chevy. It don't work. You cannot take a starter from a Porsche and put it and put it in a Chrysler. It's not gonna work. The spark plugs from one car is not gonna fit. It's gotta fit. And there is a resonance. And Marty, you were saying about us being artists. One of the things about artists is that artists tune into their flow. They tune into their flow. In the African-American community, 90% of the founders of Orisha practice in African-American community were artists. They were drummers. Baba Sergeman was a dancer. Chief Bey was a drummer. You know, and we can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And these artists were the founders of they were painters, they were sculptors, they were media technicians, they were artists. And so for me, yes, I'm an educator, but I have never been a teacher in the system because, like Michael said, the system will not let me teach. I went to the School of Education. I went to the School of Education at Boston University, and I walked away from it because it did not work. Okay, but we have to realize that literacy is not the word on the page. Literacy is not the word on the things that we have been talking about today. Being able to read the plants, being able to read the wind, being able to read the animals, that is literacy.
Exactly.
That is literacy. And artists are teachers. Artists are communicators. And so as a drummer, everything that I've done has to do with resonance. It has to do with the drum is resonance. And I teach through drumming. I heal through drumming.
I want to move to Jose. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want, before we close, we have dozens of questions. That's why I'm looking at we have dozens of questions. So we could be here all night, but we're not. So and Jose had a comment, and then we'll take at least two questions that are being fed. And if we need to do another session at another time, we will talk about that. But there are a lot of questions. Yes, Jose.
Okay. So I was listening to what Baba Michael, Juan, and then Baba Chief Neil Clark had just mentioned, and Ia too, Marta, you had mentioned about practical ways of using Ori. The most practical thing that I can think of, and it's what Baba Michael said, to start with your family. And what I'm about to say, I know in different lineages it's practiced different in different branches. But me personally, in our lineage, we initiate everybody into Ifa to know their destiny. And I say that with all respect to different traditions. All my children are initiating to Ifa. My wife's initiating to Ifa. And the practicality in that and the blessing that I see in that is I know all my three children's Odu. My wife knows her Odu. I know my Odu. We all know each other's Odu. And because we know all the pitfalls, the strengths, the weaknesses, the do's, the don'ts that we all have with each other, we can check each other. And it's not guesswork. There's no guesswork. I just have to know, this is my wife's Odu. Hey, be careful. Remember your Odu says you got to handle these types of situations this way. She'll tell me, Agbola, remember in your Odu it says this is, oh yeah, you're right. And sometimes I don't accept. I'm like, no, wait. Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. So, but in my kids, as I'm raising them, I know all their taboos and things and I see them developing. So, and one kid is like, I know you're hot-headed because your Odu says you're hot-headed. My job is to make sure that you have a cool head. Another child may be, hey, this kid may be money conscious. Let me start, working on that so that, yes, money's important, but it shouldn't be the main goal. And so I'm already working on their Oris so that by the time they get to my age, when they're 40, they don't have to go through all the guesswork that I did before I was initiated into Ifa. And the great part is that as they're working on themselves, they're naturally going to be bettering the environments and the people that they interact with, because as various of you said, when you work on yourself, you automatically start working on everybody else, and people start to shift because they see you shifted or they see you acting a certain way. So know your Odus, study your Odus, know as much as you can about ask people about your Odu, and learn as much, and start really working on the character piece, because when you do that, your destiny will fall into place.
I say,
and that's the practical part, the more practical you can be.
I see.
I think that one of the things that is key is that we have to know each other better and our systems better. Because I think
that
that,
one.
No.
I wanted to say a little bit about what Jose said, just a little bit.
Please,
That
yeah.
in Africa, they initiate kids into Ifa, 10 years, whatever. And I remember when my Baba in Nigeria, it's Kolawale Shitola, and he says that when you initiate old, they call that fixing the disaster. because when you read, this is actually made for since kid, so that your whole life you can be in Ifa, and Ifa can be dealing your whole life. In a case like me, that I did it when I was like 38, I was fixing the disaster already. And that's like very interesting for what Jose says, that it's something that for the Yoruba people, that's something ingrained from the birth. And most of the men do Ifa at 10, 9, 10. So it's like it's a very powerful mechanism for everything, socially and personal.
Yeah, all I was going to say was that we need to know the systems, because in talking to, in preparing the panel, right, Babanio came up with a very important point. In the Brazilian system, Ori is honored first,
Oh, absolutely.
right? So
Yep.
there, it's your head, right? In the Lukumi system, hay mano de Orula, right? So that when you receive mano de Orula or you receive kofa, that's your reading in terms of your signal. So that you know your signal once you receive either mano de Orula or kofa, right? So that somehow our people have been able to maintain all of the pieces in the system, but fixing them in different ways, right? Depending on where the puzzle fell, whether it was Brazil or whether it was Puerto Rico or it was Trinidad, somehow the pieces are there. It seems to me, right?
The pieces are there. The pieces are there. But what has happened is, in different places, they are more developed. We have to recognize. I mean, it's essential for us to recognize that our tradition is about spirituality. It's about culture. It's about history, and it's about politics. And if we are not willing or able to recognize those dimensions of it and how they impact on the way we practice, we must understand the spirituality of it, but we must also understand the culture of it. We must also understand the politics of it, and we must also understand the history of it. Why did things happen in Nigeria? Why did things happen in Cuba? Why did things happen in Brazil? Why did things happen in Trinidad? Why did things happen in Haiti? So that the various dimensions of the tradition are practiced with an emphasis on one part or another part, depending on where you are. But
it depends on the ethnic groups that were brought. I mean, when we went to Nigeria and took my vida and my sunta, right? I mean, my vida was able to emphasize on Ochosi, right? And Sunta basically said Puerto Riqueña in Africa, gone to Africa. I think probably one of the first people to go, right? From the Caribbean and from the US as well. She had Ori already, because that's the first time I heard about Ori.
That's right.
Ori in Africa. And
that's
then
right.
When my vida, who was a priestess of Yemaya from Candomblé, and Sunta met in Nigeria, right? In the conference we made, they were able to compare notes and understand that the majority group that went to certain areas in Brazil were Ochosi. Went as Ochosi, so took the secrets of Ochosi. So Ochosi was able to be crowned in Brazil, where it wasn't crowned in other locations, because the secrets were there.
Exactly. And when you look at the drumming, why is bata so prevalent in Cuba, but it doesn't exist in Brazil? Why is atabaque so prevalent? And it has to do with the ethnic groups, because each Orisha has their own drums. So I mean, there's so much to this conversation. We definitely are not gonna. We're definitely not gonna be able to exhaust this in the next 10 minutes.
So what I would say is I'd like to put at least one of the questions that was asked, so we would not be dismissive of the wonderful people who are listening. And thank you all for listening in, because I had questions about how people would respond to the topic. Um, can Ori change in terms of character? I would think, can Ori change a character? Your character, I guess, is the question.
What?
If I may, real quick.
Change character, I would say.
If I may, yeah. In the Congo concept of Ntu, right? We understand that Ntu cannot be destroyed, and Ntu cannot be damaged. Ntu, what it can be though, is seriously dirtied, right? Seriously covered. It's like you take a light bulb, it's on, you cover that light bulb with dirt and with something to cover the light will still shine from within. We may not be able to see it because it's been dirty. And because of this, we have different methods and different ways of cleaning the dirt off of what we need to see, right? And that's very much associated with Ntu, right? So there are different betrayals that we call, they're called betrayals, right? Which is always found interesting. When you go against your Ntu, when you go against your Ntu, that's actually called a betrayal. It's called Twala Keza, which is to go against your Ntu, to go against your consciousness, that's betrayal, right? So there are different ways, whether it's betraying your elders, whether it's betraying yourself, whether it's putting yourself in a position where you know it's not going to help you, or you know it's going to hurt you, but you put yourself into that position regardless. So there are different ways that that by changing your character, by changing your way of being, by changing by changing the things that you do in order to betray yourself and your own Ntu, right? That can help to kind of cleanse that dirt off of that light bulb, right? That's still shining, but is so covered in dirt, so covered in grime, so covered in betrayal that it's that it can't be seen anymore, right? The light can't be seen.
Thank you.
About
And I'm a little uncomfortable with the idea of Ori being cleaned up. I don't believe that. I agree with Alex in that it is about our behavior. It is about our conduct to allow our Ori to shine. So I just felt that I needed to say that just in terms of how we conceptualize Ori. I don't think that there's an Ori that needs to be cleaned. We can have when we got to be careful about comparisons. Everybody has their own destiny, They say the best garbage man is better than the worst president. And I'm not gonna mention no names. but the best garbage man is better than the worst president. So it's a matter that everybody has their own destiny. Everyone has their own that can be impacted by a lack of character, by a lack of not being Omoluwabi. That's all.
Yeah, and I agree because Dr. Foucault said that the Ntu, right, the divine consciousness, it can't be dirty, but it can be covered. It can be covered up by your own actions. That's right. The whole term of betrayals, right? Exactly. By your own personal betrayals.
I say.
So I'm going to read one more question, and we'll close with that. Is Ori the entry point of Eku?
Eku.
Eku or Iku?
Iku, sorry.
Iku. I don't understand the question.
So we'll go on to the next one, and maybe the person could write in what they were thinking. How can we use our individual Ori to the life of our children and family? Or
Say
Ori
that.
change in terms of character, or can Ori change in terms of character?
Oh, Abuela.
And I think that Jose answered that beautifully when he gave the example of his family and how he incorporates Ori in terms of his family and divination,
Ashe.
right? So I thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you all. I'm so excited by the topic and excited by the discussion. And thank you for sharing your wisdom with us and your experiences with us. And I will say, bon nuit, good night. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Marta, for having this forum and
Yes, thank you.
inviting me to participate in this. It's very exciting. Thank you so much.
I thought you always say no because I haven't heard it discussed publicly. So I was like, nobody's going to say yes, but thank you for saying yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. I appreciate a lot your invitation. I'm glad to see Jose that I haven't that he's here, and we've seen each other a lot. And great to meet you, Chief, and Michael and Alex. It's a great conversation.
My pleasure. Let's continue this conversation.
No,
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank
Blessings to
you.
all.
All right, to all.